It all begins in a bustling, noisy city, but the real focus of our story lies deep beneath the ground, down in the sewers. The MC, named Wu Ju, reveals that he transmigrated into this strange world over half a year ago and has been stuck working in this dingy workshop ever since. Even after grinding day in and day out all this time, the poor guy has only managed to scrape together a pitiful sum of 5 silver coins. To make matters worse, he needs a whole gold coin to attempt a class advancement ritual, which would take about 8 years of grueling labor at this rate. Completely burnt out by his current situation, he bitterly wonders when this miserable routine is finally going to end. He remembers that he was just a regular college graduate and hardcore gamer before being mysteriously pulled into this new reality. As soon as he arrived, the young man was lucky enough to witness an intense clash between the top-tier combatants who ruled this world. The fight was so insane that one of the gigantic beasts crashed right in front of him, nearly scaring him out of his wits right on the spot. The young man stood completely paralyzed with fear as his eyes took in that unbelievable and dangerous scene. But before disaster struck, an armored warrior suddenly leaped into his line of sight to save him. That single, devastating strike instantly showed the newcomer the massive power gap that existed between them. He was left in utter disbelief by the overwhelming power of that elite fighter, who looked like a true battle deity in action. After being rescued, he was evaluated as having 0 combat talent and ended up assigned to the humble job of clearing out sewers. Earning a mere 1,100 copper coins, this was the only way an ordinary person could ever hope to save up for that coveted gold coin. Since then, his daily grind has been this dreary, sunless routine deep underground, which is slowly driving the guy up the wall. Wide-eyed from sheer stress, the young man realizes he is going to lose his mind if he stays trapped in this rut for much longer. He decides he is not going to spend the next few years just relying on pure luck, especially knowing that he has a personal status panel. Wu Ju makes up his mind that he needs to become a powerful fighter at all costs to rewrite his destiny once and for all. Opening his status window, he sees that everyone possesses base attributes, but having an active talent is exceptionally rare. He knows full well that an unawakened talent is basically useless and leaves him as good as helpless. The guy has a talent called Extraction that remains locked, with 0 hints on how it can actually be awakened. Wu Ju ponders with curiosity whether this rare skill could extract stats, items, or maybe even abilities from others. Glancing at his notes on the local monsters pinned to the wall, he grabs a sharp tool and decides it is high time to take action. He inspects a low-grade scrap of metal, wondering if this junk could somehow trigger a reaction with his extraction talent. With no time to waste, he equips himself with a metal pipe and a manhole cover to use as a makeshift shield. The young man opens the workshop door, determined to face the dangers outside, knowing this is his only shot at turning his life around. Wu Ju navigates through the massive dark sewer tunnels, moving cautiously as he searches for his very first target. Suddenly, a metallic clatter echoes through the quiet tunnel and catches the young man's attention, putting him on high alert immediately. His gaze sharpens in the darkness as he realizes the sound might signal the presence of whatever he has been hunting for. With his heart pounding, the guy ducks into the shadows and steadies his makeshift weapon for whatever might jump out at him. Peering carefully from behind the heavy pipes, he tries to spot what is causing all that suspicious movement. To his surprise, an odd creature known as a thorn rat creeps into view right in the middle of the city drainage system. He recalls the monster guide he studied for months, confirming that this dangerous beast usually roams far away from here. Taking a closer look, Wu Ju notices the creature is badly injured and bleeding heavily from one of its hind legs. The guy realizes this weakened beast is hands down the best opportunity he has ever had to get what he needs. If he simply reported the creature to the guild, he would only get a tiny bounty that wouldn't change his rough situation one bit. But if he takes the risk and takes down the beast all by himself, he might secure valuable drops to pay for his class ritual. Set on obtaining power at any cost, the young man takes a deep breath, puts his fear aside, and gears up for the offensive. He knows these giant rodents have super-sensitive hearing and that any loud noise will set them off in seconds. Using this to his advantage, the guy slams his metal pipe against the wall to create a loud clang and lure the creature in. The trick works like a charm, and the beast lets out an ear-piercing screech of pure rage upon hearing the annoying metallic noise. Having drawn the creature's aggro, the young man dashes off as fast as he can to trigger the second phase of his strategy. He needs to kite the enraged monster straight into a trap he set up earlier around one of the tunnel corners. Timing the wounded target's movements, the MC notes that its speed is way below normal thanks to that injury. Wu-Ju calculates that he will need exactly 3 seconds of a full sprint to reach the sweet spot of his trap. The monster charges aggressively right on his heels as the countdown to impact begins. With just 2 seconds left on the clock, he mentally braces himself and angles his makeshift shield to absorb the incoming attack. At the very last second, the MC takes a sharp breath, pivots instantly, and faces the incoming threat head-on without flinching. The giant rodent launches a deadly barrage of sharp quills flying straight toward the young man's position. With pinpoint reaction time, the young man manages to deflect every single quill with his metal cover, shutting down the beast's attack. Knowing the monster's quill skill has a 30-second cooldown, the guy realizes this is his prime window to counterattack. He charges forward with all the speed he can muster, fully aware that there is no turning back now. Since his raw physical strength is too low for straight hand-to-hand combat, the young man hurls his heavy shield directly at the monster. Gripping his sharpened piece of scrap metal, Wu-Ju gets ready to deliver the finishing blow the moment the target stumbles. Capitalizing on the opening created by the flying shield, the guy leaps relentlessly straight toward the giant rodent's head. He lets out a determined battle cry, recognizing that this is the defining moment to wrap up the entire clash. With a clean, furious strike, the young man buries his makeshift blade right into the monster's skull amid a burst of energy. Having landed the decisive strike, the guy steps back gasping for air, hoping that blow was enough to take the opponent down for good. To his relief, the beast collapses defeated on the ground, leaving 2 glowing orbs floating in mid-air to confirm an ordinary human really pulled off the win. The system prompts that he earned 0 experience since he is still classless, but the young man doesn't mind as long as he can collect the loot. He celebrates that his very first takedown yielded 2 item drops at once, daydreaming about the chance of scoring a class tome. Getting his hands on a book like that would be hitting the absolute jackpot, giving him a massive shot at becoming a legit warrior. With high hopes fueling his drive, the MC reaches out his hand to grab the 2 glowing rewards hovering before him. But reality hits hard when he sees the dropped loot is merely a single coin, alongside a small pouch containing copper coins. The young man lets out a disappointed sigh, realizing that changing his whole life overnight was too much to ask, and that he only pocketed pocket change. Shrugging off the frustration, he decides to check out the defeated rodent to see if he can extract anything useful from the remains. Lifting the fallen beast by its tail, Wu-Ju catches sight of an odd detail on its belly and ends up totally baffled. The guy spots clear stitching marks across the creature's skin, making him suspect someone hid a secret item inside the beast. Upon checking it out, he uncovers a mysterious dark class tome radiating a dangerous and forbidden energy. Despite the alarming system warnings popping up, the young man breaks into a massive grin upon confirming it is indeed a class advancement manual. Clutching the dark relic tightly, he feels that his golden ticket out of this dreary sewer life has finally arrived. Out of nowhere, a heavy armored boot lands right in his field of vision as a commanding voice orders him to drop the item immediately. To the guy's surprise, the armored warrior from before stands there with a stern look, warning him that the item must not be touched. The young man instantly recognizes the veteran who saved his skin months back and feels relieved to run into his rescuer again. The warrior remembers the kid as well, but the tension remains thick in the air as they lock eyes in the narrow sewer corridor. Wu-Ju offers a sincere apology but makes it clear he won't give up the artifact easily, leaving the veteran utterly baffled by his boldness. With eyes full of resolve, the young man mutters to himself that he simply has no other choice if he wants to change his destiny. Without a second thought, he slams the dark artifact against the ground to trigger the dangerous activation ritual right then and there. The warrior goes into full panic mode over the kid's reckless move and desperately yells for him to halt this madness right now. Wrapped in an eerie purple aura, the guy screams in pain while admitting to himself that resorting to this shady shortcut is pretty questionable. Still, he would rather brave the shadows than spend the rest of his days clearing out gutters without any real future ahead. Feeling his spirit strained by the overwhelming energy, he powers through, knowing he cannot let this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity slip away. The veteran watches in utter disbelief and asks why on earth the kid chose to trigger the forbidden item the second he saw him show up. The warrior demands to know what caused such sheer desperation, especially since the kid seemed ready to talk before spotting him in the dark. Gritting his teeth through the intense strain, the young man confesses that he was originally terrified of getting wiped out by the veteran. He explains that he only found the courage after recognizing the decent guy who saved him in the past, even leaving his life savings behind if he doesn't make it. The guy feels his strength rapidly slipping away and whispers his final words of hope right before drifting into unconsciousness. The status panel flashes an ominous warning that the MC's spirit is on the verge of being completely overwhelmed by the darkness. As the young man passes out, the warrior fumes over the wild logic of being taken advantage of simply because he is a good person. The man grumbles in disbelief at the kid's sheer nerve, yet his expression betrays a hint of genuine concern for the young man's harsh fate. Left with no choice, the veteran rushes forward to catch the young man's limp body before it hits the dirty floor. Right at that moment, an ominous dark apparition bursts from the MC's body, forcing the warrior to draw his glowing blade. A violent clash of magical forces erupts right there in the tunnel, lighting up the entire sewer with a massive blast of blue energy. Meanwhile, the MC comes to, floating in an eerie, pitch-black void, without the slightest clue where in the world he ended up. He spots a massive, intimidating throne hovering in the middle of nowhere, fearing his class advancement ritual turned into a complete disaster. Towering before him stands the commanding figure of the Dark Lord, whose status screen displays nothing but question marks across every single stat. The guy is completely frozen before that overwhelming presence, feeling an intense pressure that keeps him from moving a single muscle. The colossal dark entity looks down on him with utter disdain, calling him an ant and fuming that a mere human dared to touch his sacred domain. A giant red target mark appears above the young man, signaling that the entity's wrath is about to wipe him out of existence. On the verge of being consumed by the devastating power, the MC refuses to go down like this after fighting so hard just to survive. Just when he had finally seen a light at the end of the tunnel, the guy deeply resents the thought of getting taken out in such a silly way. However, the eerie darkness surrounding him begins to scatter as a powerful gust of wind blows the shadowy traces away. A solid barrier of blue light materializes to shield the MC, breaking the Dark Lord's crushing oppression in an instant. With a brilliant, sudden flash, the light barrier completely envelops the young man and yanks him right out of that perilous spiritual realm. The Dark Lord watches the escape with a mix of amusement and curiosity, confident that the kid's soul will eventually cross paths with darkness again. The scene shifts over to the Carrion Plains, a bleak, desolate expanse littered with scattered bones stretching across the ground. The guy wakes up lying on the wooden floor of a rundown, abandoned shack covered in thick cobwebs. He slowly blinks his eyes open, feeling bruised and battered from the rough ride of his sudden dimensional jump. Suddenly, his eyes widen in pure astonishment upon realizing that he is still breathing and that the worst seems to be over. He scrambles to his feet to check himself over, still in shock, wondering if he genuinely made it through that crazy ordeal. While trying to catch his breath, he remembers the huge burst of blue light and figures that mysterious energy saved him at the final second. Just then, an electronic chime rings in his mind, drawing his attention to a floating stack of notifications hovering right before his eyes. The system explains that the warrior Zhou Huaming used a secret scroll to teleport him into this trial realm, and that he now has an active survival quest. Thanks to the unique energy of this hidden realm, the corruption of his soul was stabilized, and his class advancement ritual was successfully wrapped up. With tears of pure gratitude welling up, the young man realizes that experienced warrior ended up saving his neck for the second time. Eager to test out his new toolkit, he points his index finger forward and watches a small magical spark begin to take shape. He pulls up his brand new status as a necromancer apprentice and celebrates enthusiastically over finally becoming an official combatant. Even if the ritual completion rate was only 17%, that was more than enough to leave his ordinary civilian life behind. He notes that his new magic class turns him into a ranged damage dealer, which is fantastic for keeping things safe in a place like this. But the guy's celebration gets cut short when the old wooden door of the shack is suddenly blown to pieces with a terrifying bang. Wu-Ju ducks by instinct and glares toward the entrance of the shack, trying to scope out the threat that just barged in. To his absolute horror, a decayed corpse with glowing red eyes steps inside, letting out a chilling growl directly at him. Spotting that it is a level 5 monster, the young man dodges the creature's lunging attack, knowing one solid hit could end his run right here. He slides across the dusty floor to create some breathing room, but quickly realizes the monster's speed is way higher than anticipated. With no time for fancy tactics, the MC points his finger and rushes to cast his ranged magic offensive spell. However, the undead is way too fast and closes the distance on the guy before he can even finish the incantation. The monster lands a heavy strike that slams the young man against the wall, interrupting his casting halfway through and shattering his rhythm. Feeling the sting of the impact, Wu-Ju realizes he urgently needs to build some distance if he wants any chance of getting a spell off. But the carrion beast keeps up the pressure, swinging another aggressive strike right toward his face, leaving the guy barely able to block. With blood dripping from his mouth, the young man realizes in a panic that this creature's physical power is way higher than he anticipated. The force of the strike is so brutal that the MC gets launched right through the wall, smashing through the rotten wooden planks. He tumbles violently across the dry dirt outside as dust and broken splinters scatter all around his landing spot. Panting and aching all over, he clutches his chest, feeling as though his ribs nearly gave out under the sheer force of that blow. Despite the bruises, he notices the knockback tossed him to a safe distance, giving him his one and only window to turn things around. The ravenous undead slowly emerges through the hole in the cabin wall, locking its glowing eyes on the MC grounded in the dirt. Channeling what little strength he has left, the young necromancer holds out his glowing blue hand and recites the spell with total focus. A solid spear of condensed bone shoots out at high speed, flying straight toward the chest of the advancing carrion monster. The projectile lands a direct hit on the enemy's chest, and the guy cracks a relieved smile upon seeing his very first necromancy spell work. But his brief victory lap turns into pure shock when he notices something completely off with the wounded undead's reaction. The guy realizes his rookie mistake way too late, remembering that the chest is hardly a weak spot on a target that has been lifeless for ages. Completely unfazed by the hole in its chest, the monster lets out an enraged roar and charges down the young man with even greater ferocity. In a lightning-fast rush, the creature clamps down hard on the guy's arm, making him yell out in pain from the direct bite. In that moment of sheer panic, the young man flashes back to nearly getting mauled in the sewers and feels like history is about to repeat itself. He lets out a shout of pure fury and frustration, refusing to get taken out here after staking everything just to unlock his class. With a wild look in his eyes, the MC sets his mind on the fact that he is absolutely not ending up as Zombie Chow in his very first fight. He pours all his adrenaline and survival instinct into his next move, determined to wipe out the target once and for all. The guy points his free hand directly at the creature's head and starts chanting his bone spell point blank without a second thought. The heavy bone spear fires at point-blank range, piercing clean through the undead's skull and taking out its real weak point. The corpse finally drops motionless onto the dusty ground, leaving the guy collapsing onto his knees as he tries to catch his breath. The system alerts him that he caught poison from the bite, but also reveals that his new class softened the blow and unlocked his extraction talent. Right after the carrion beast goes down, the guy notices a small, glowing orb of light materialize above the fallen creature's body. He can barely hide his excitement upon seeing that a simple low-level mob actually dropped a piece of magical gear. The guy reaches out with his sore arm, eager to check his new loot and hoping it turns out to be super useful for the road ahead. The system announces that he secured the skeleton staff, a spooky-looking magic focus tailor-made for a necromancer. Looking over the stats, he sees the staff boosts mana regen and grants the ability to summon a minion, making it a dream fit for his build. Hyped about the new minion summoning perk, he decides to test the spell right away to see the summon do its thing. However, the interface flashes a red warning that his mana is basically on empty, leaving him short on points for the cast. Wu-Ju realizes with frustration that his earlier offensive spam burned through nearly all his pool, leaving him with a measly 5 mana points. But a confident grin quickly returns to his face as he remembers his extraction talent finally unlocked with that kill. He checks the skill breakdown and discovers it allows him to permanently siphon stats from the monsters he takes down. The guy celebrates the ridiculous power of this broken talent, the ultimate cheat code for any transmigrated MC looking to get overpowered. Still, activating the skill demands 20 mana points, which forces him to patch up his wounds first before trying out the power. He takes stock of his rough spot, dealing with exhaustion, active poison, and an extreme lack of basic resources to survive out here. Knowing he cannot just sit around losing blood in the middle of nowhere, he tears off a strip from his ripped shirt to use as a makeshift wrap. The guy ties the cloth tightly around his injured arm, knowing another monster jump right now would spell game over for good. Once the bleeding is under control, he looks down at the defeated mob on the ground and starts cooking up a quick plan to stay safe. Wu-Ju walks over to the rotten remains and smears his hands with the creature's foul, dark fluid without thinking twice. He rubs the grime across his face, hoping the overwhelming stench of decay will mask his scent as a living human. The guy carefully heads back inside the abandoned cabin, waiting for his energy to tick back up before making his next move. Leaning against the wooden wall, he plans to stockpile mana, siphon stats off tough targets, and build up an absurd power level over time. With a laser-focused, determined look, he convinces himself that becoming an unstoppable powerhouse is purely a matter of patience. While he rests inside, other undead keep shuffling quietly across the bleak, empty wasteland right outside. Temporarily shielded by the shadows of the old shack, the young man waits patiently for the exact moment his stats top off. Tracking his status window, he eagerly watches his mana bar slowly climb back up as time ticks away. Seeing that he finally hit the required mana threshold, the MC gears up to cast the long-awaited summon spell. He stands up, grips the skeleton staff, and chants the mystical words needed to bring his servant to life. A swirling gust of glowing magic kicks up in the center of the room, sending dust and rotten wood splinters flying in every direction. Emerging from the dust cloud is a tiny level 3 skeleton, which the system cheekily labels as a great disposable tactical minion. The guy takes note of the little bone minion's average stats, but finds comfort in knowing he is no longer all by himself out here. With a warm smile on his face, the young man pats the little skeleton on the head and officially dubs him Wu Wei. Flashing back to his lonely days in the gutters, he genuinely appreciates having a partner around, knowing nobody makes it far alone in this world. Wu-Ju designates the little skeleton as his primary frontline defense against the nasty threats lurking out on the plains. He glances at his resources again and notices that maintaining the little summon slowly burns his precious mana over time. The MC feels his stamina dipping and concludes that just camping out here is a slow ticket to nowhere. The young man reasons that every survival-based trial realm has got to have a supply cache with basic food and clean water. Wu-Ju and his little minion head out to explore the wasteland, aware that these resource points are likely crawling with mobs to fight. The two move carefully along the rocky ridges, ducking behind a massive boulder to scope out the movement up ahead. The guy peeks intently through the gap in the rocks, scanning for any signs of trouble or anything valuable in the area. He spots a surprisingly well-kept house with flowers and a mysterious chest sitting right out front, which looks way too good to not be an obvious trap. Despite the clear ambush bait, the MC flashes a clever grin, knowing that chest could be his golden ticket out of this mess. With zero cover around, he deduces that dozens of mobs are probably camping inside the house, so he decides to test their aggro range. He turns to his little bone buddy and orders the small skeleton to walk forward slowly as bait while he keeps watch from the rear. The brave Wu Wei trots toward the mysterious cabin under his master's watchful eye as the system tracks the exact distance in meters. Suddenly, heavy, stomping footsteps begin echoing from inside the cabin, kicking up dust and confirming the guy's worst suspicions. The moment the little skeleton hits the exact 50-meter mark, the danger hiding inside finally decides to burst out. A massive, terrifying horde of dozens of hungry undead storms out, smashing through everything in their path on the hunt for fresh targets. Seeing the ridiculous mob of bloodthirsty enemies pouring out, the guy panics and yells at his minion to fall back right this second. The skeleton bolts back, while the MC sizes up the pack's stats, realizing he might have to sacrifice the minion for valuable intel. He knows full well that surviving and leveling up calls for tough calls, even if it means losing his only squad mate. With a stern look, the young man makes the call and commands the little skeleton to turn around and face the charging pack head-on. The brave Wu Wei follows the command without hesitation, sprinting straight into the hungry horde to buy precious time. A few seconds later, the system log flashes that the minion was destroyed, but the guy vows that the sacrifice won't be in vain. With no more living bait to chase, the mobs settle down and go back to shuffling aimlessly around the wooden cabin. Using a small twig, he sketches a layout in the dirt and figures out that staying beyond the 50-meter boundary avoids triggering the entire pack at once. With a much sharper and more confident look, he finally cracks the aggro mechanics of these dangerous targets. He sets up camp on top of a safe rocky vantage point and begins preparing a new bone minion the second his mana fully regenerates. The guy raises his skeleton staff and recites the incantation once more to bring back his loyal battle partner. With a sharp flash of mystic light cutting through the air, a fresh bone minion is summoned to take the place of the fallen vanguard. The MC smiles at his new summon and decides to rename him Erguzi, keeping things nice and simple for his new buddy. Wuju breaks down the new game plan in detail, coaching the skeleton on how to pull just one single target at a time. The minion proves to be pretty clever, bending down to pick up a decent-sized rock from the ground to use as a distraction tool. Erguzi lifts the rock with his skinny skeletal arm, all set to execute the play his master drew up to perfection. Showing surprisingly good aim, he chucks the heavy rock right at the back of an undead mob that had its back turned. The carrion creature lets out a confused groan and turns around, trying to figure out what on earth just clocked it on the head. The two stand there locking eyes in total silence for a few seconds, making for a hilarious staring contest in the middle of the wasteland. But the undead's patience wears thin real quick, and it unleashes a furious roar the second it spots who threw the rock. The skeleton bolts for dear life with the monster hot on his heels, executing the single-target pull strategy to perfection. Watching the whole thing go down from his high perch, the MC smirks upon seeing the target walk right into the setup. The undead rounds the massive boulder, chasing the bone minion, completely unaware that the real threat is waiting right above it. With a sharp gaze locked onto the target, the young necromancer decides this is the prime moment to drop his surprise attack. Taking advantage of the high ground, he drops down and brings his skeleton staff crashing right onto the oblivious target's skull. The monster stumbles from the unexpected blow while the guy readies his short blade to finish the job cleanly. Even while dazed, the hungry undead tries to scramble up the rock to attack, but the guy is already prepped to meet the charge. Keeping his cool and giving zero room to breathe, the young man instantly triggers his magic circle right in the target's face. A solid bone spear fires at point-blank range straight through the creature's mouth, obliterating its brain instantly. The target collapses motionless, and the guy celebrates a clean takedown that nets him more experience points toward his next level. Sporting a winning smile, he realizes that if he keeps pulling targets like this, he can easily sweep through the entire mob pack. He praises the little skeleton's solid hustle and orders him to scout out the next target to repeat the pulling loop. The guy does the math and sees he only needs a few more takedowns to level up, and those bodies will be prime fuel for his talent. He knows that clearing out this undead camp will give his stats and summons a massive power spike. However, an unexpected noise suddenly breaks the rhythm, and the guy instantly tenses up at what he is looking at. Poor Erguzi comes sprinting back in absolute panic, being chased down by no fewer than 5 angry undead. Freaking out over the minion's botch, the MC yells at the top of his lungs, telling him to loop around the rock to break their formation. The little skeleton rounds the boulder with 5 mobs breathing down his neck, while his master frantically looks for a quick play from above. He plants his feet on the rock and grips his short metal weapon, fully aware he will have to go all out to get out of this alive. Running too low on mana for spells, the young man decides to improvise and chucks a heavy rock right at the lead pursuer's head. The rock strike temporarily staggers one of the mobs, and the guy capitalizes on the opening to focus all his damage on that single target. With a well-placed bone spear, the guy manages to take out the frontrunner while the others keep trying to climb up. But things take a turn for the worse when the system interface alerts him that his mana pool just hit 0 at the worst possible time. He worries that if this scrap drags on, little Erguzi won't stand a chance against the remaining 4 mobs. Being completely drained of magical energy, the guy hurriedly reaches down to grab another loose stone from the ledge. He dials in his throwing stance and puts his full weight behind it, aiming to tag another target with the makeshift projectile. The hard throw lands dead center on another undead's forehead, making it stagger back from the heavy impact of the strike. However, the rock hit isn't enough to drop it, and the angry mob keeps climbing up the rock straight toward the MC. Running out of defensive plays, the guy leans over the edge and delivers a vicious overhead swing right into the climber's face. But in a fast counter, the monster's sharp claws manage to swipe the guy's leg, ripping through his pants with ease. Shrugging off the pain, the young man brings his bone staff down with pure adrenaline right between the pesky mob's eyes. He drives the tip of the skeleton staff hard into the target's skull until he sends it crashing back down with a brutal shove. With one last decisive strike, he drives his makeshift blade into the target's head, splattering dark fluid across the rock. Out of breath and annoyed by the scratch, the guy fumes that he spent months grinding in the sewers and isn't about to get taken down by basic zombies. Wu Ju smashes his staff down with all his frustration, shouting that he didn't reincarnate into this weird world just to get dropped by trash mobs. With the final blow landed, the system logs the successful kill of the carrion corpse, awarding him 5 experience points for the close victory. Exhausted from all the craziness, Wu Ju slumps onto the rock to catch his breath, noticing a glowing orb hovering right before him. Intrigued by the mysterious glow, he slowly reaches out with his gloved hand to interact with the loot and see what dropped. To his delight, the system reveals he scored a minor mana potion, which is the perfect fuel to wipe out the rest of the pack. Wasting no time on celebrations, he pops the cork off the blue vial with his teeth as fast as he can. The guy downs the bottle in a single gulp, chugging the magical liquid to replenish his energy reserves before trouble flares up again. With the potion kicking in instantly, a rush of energy begins coursing through his veins, making him feel refreshed and ready to jump back in. Meanwhile, the remaining 3 undead keep scrambling up the rock like madmen, eager to take the guy down. But now that his tank is completely topped off, Wu Ju channels magical power into both hands, ready to show them who calls the shots. He unleashes accurate spell blasts that hit the climbing mobs dead on, leaving little Erguzi watching in complete awe of how easy he makes it look. Taking the cue from his master, the little skeleton charges in and lands a solid blow right in the face of one of the advancing zombies. The little helper's strike lands hard, proving that even as a skinny skeleton, he can definitely pack a punch when he wants to. The system starts pinging back-to-back kill notifications, and the guy watches his experience bar shoot up in no time. With a confident smirk, he decides now is the prime window to test his extraction talent, while the potion's momentum is still rolling. He leaps down from the rock with total agility, sticking a clean landing on the dirt right next to the fallen mobs. The young man holds out his hand and begins channeling his special extraction skill, concentrating a bright blue energy in the palm of his glove. A series of notifications pops up, showing a mix of failed and successful attempts at siphoning physical stats from the defeated bodies. He feels a bit puzzled, reading the system message stating he will have to figure out on his own how to allocate the points he just banked. with few other clues. The guy taps the glowing prompt again to figure out what options he has for this new stat pool. The interface pulls up all available upgrade paths, and Woo-Ju starts calculating where to drop the points to get the most mileage out of his build. That is when he spots a next-page arrow and wonders if there is a way to pump these stats into something other than his own character. Curious about this new feature, he clicks the forward button on the floating screen to see what options are tucked away on that tab. The panel reveals that he can also upgrade his combat skills, leaving the guy thrilled by the massive potential of his talent. He weighs the pros and cons, concluding that tossing a couple of minor points into himself would barely move the needle in the middle of a fight. Woo-Ju glances over at Erguzi and wonders if upgrading the skeleton summon skill could trigger an evolution for his little buddy. To settle the question once and for all, the guy points his finger and clicks the option to upgrade his skeleton summoning technique. The system locks in the choice and offers two distinct paths to spend his points, getting the guy even more hyped about the possibilities. Realizing he can directly buff his pet skeleton, he doesn't hesitate for a second and selects the summon enhancement route. But his excitement takes a hit when a pop-up warns that this evolution process is going to run him 300 bronze coins. Even while grumbling about the hefty price tag, he clicks confirm and watches his hard-earned cash vanish to complete the upgrade. A blue glow wraps around little Erguzi as the system informs them that they now share a deep bond, meaning the summon no longer drains the guy's mana. Thrilled with the return on his expensive investment, Woo-Ju gives the skeleton a friendly pat on the back and tells him to keep up the grind. The upgraded skeleton bolts forward with impressive speed and lands a clean strike on the very first enemy crossing his path. Meanwhile, his master provides backline cover by slinging ranged magic, banking even more experience points along the way. The dynamic duo starts working in total sync, clearing out the zone effortlessly without giving the zombies a single window to fight back. The two unleash back-to-back combos on the leftovers, weaving melee pressure and spell bursts together in devastating fashion. After sweeping through every mob in the area, the two finally take a breather to catch their breath and recover from that high-octane brawl. But the quiet moment is brief as a golden halo-like glow manifests above the guy's head, signaling that a major milestone is hitting. A full-screen notification flashes that Woo-Ju has officially reached level 2, bumping up his spirit stat along with his max mana pool. Despite the milestone, he makes a slightly disappointed face upon seeing that the level-up stat gains are a bit lower than he originally hoped. Without wasting time sulking, the guy heads over to another fresh body and fires off his extraction skill again, successfully snagging extra agility points. He decides to drop another 200 bronze coins from his pouch to route this fresh upgrade straight into Erguzi's frame. Checking over the skeleton's refreshed stat sheet, the guy is blown away by how ridiculously boosted Erguzi's numbers have become. Pumped by his bony buddy's progress, he walks over to the final fallen target to squeeze in one more extraction before the timer expires. The system reveals that this time he managed to pull a minor health potion, ideal for patching up light scrapes and restoring some physical stamina. The young man checks out the red vial in his hand, acknowledging that this medicine arrived right on time to tend to the scratch on his leg. He thinks back to that tense moment when the undead's claws tore through his pants, leaving a bloody mark on his left shin. Woo-Ju weighs the utility of that heal and decides an item like this is way too valuable to burn on a minor scratch. Thinking ahead, he slips the vial safely onto his belt, dead set on saving that valuable resource for a real emergency down the road. Woo-Ju narrows his eyes with a focused, serious gaze, signaling that the real challenge on this desolate plain is about to go down. He notes that all the wandering mobs along the perimeter have been cleared out, leaving only a massive group huddled up ahead. The guy smirks and decides the time has finally come to take on the main undead pack once and for all. He starts mapping out a plan by sketching in the dirt with his staff, knowing that these brainless zombies have zero tactical awareness. The necromancer tells his loyal buddy Erguzi to dig as many pits as possible along the strategic path he just drew on the ground. Without complaining about the manual labor, the little bone helper scampers off toward the valley to start prepping the pit traps. He puts in serious work, tossing dirt everywhere as he shovels out hole after hole at an impressive speed. 2 full hours tick by, and the field ends up looking like Swiss cheese full of traps, with Erguzi returning totally spent from the effort. Thrilled with how the setup turned out, the master gives the skeleton's bald head a quick pat to reward the solid hustle. The guy looks his partner in the eye, warning him that the complete success or total failure of the mission rides on this next play. Next, Wu Ju gives the final green light for the little skeleton to head out alone and aggro the entire hungry mob horde. The skeleton charges fearlessly toward the enemy pack, stomping hard on the ground to make plenty of noise and catch the slow zombie's attention. He stops right in front of the undead mob, acting as prime walking bait to get the entire pack to lock onto him in a blind chase. The moment the creatures start rushing him, the little guy turns on his heels and books it, leading a massive wave of decaying mobs right behind him. Watching the play from afar, the necromancer yells at the top of his lungs for his summon to stick strictly to the escape route they planned. Erguzi hops nimbly over one of the dug pits, causing the careless zombies right on his tail to tumble straight into the hole. Despite the initial tumble, the rest of the noisy horde keeps barreling forward, kicking up a massive dust cloud along the trail. The master hypes up as the first batch of kill logs scrolls across his screen, stacking a fat chunk of experience all at once. He urges his little runner to keep moving without stopping, keeping the tempo up to lead the rest of the pack to the exact same trap. From above, the whole thing looks like a comedy show as zombies drop into dozens of pits one by one, leaving the pack scattered and vulnerable. Wu Ju is pleasantly surprised to see the tactic work even better than expected, racking up dozens of passive kills in just a few minutes. However, the tone shifts when a massive, much more menacing zombie comes sprinting full speed right behind the fleeing skeleton. Sizing up the charging brute, the guy spots right away that this is an elite monster, way more dangerous than the standard fodder. He picks up another rock from the ground, eyes lighting up at the thought of what incredible stats he might extract from such a beefy target. The young man winds up his throw, knowing he has to pick off the smaller stragglers first so he can focus entirely on the big guy. He launches the projectile with pinpoint precision, scoring a direct hit on the head of one of the smaller mobs running behind. The struck target drops to the dirt with zero chance to react, securing a few more key experience points for the guy's progress bar. The necromancer begins channeling his hardest-hitting spell, gathering death energy in his hands to land a decisive finishing blow. The bone spike shoots forward at high speed and pierces the jaw of the last regular zombie, finishing the job with a clean crack. With that takedown, a burst of light washes over him, and the system prompts that he finally hit level 3, boosting his max mana pool even more. On top of that, the system announces that he unlocked a new class ability and that his main summon skill just leveled up. He quickly taps the floating interface to read up on the details of the fresh skill granted by the system. To his excitement, the guy discovers he can now summon 2 level 4 skeletons simultaneously, all while cutting down the mana upkeep cost. With the skill leveled up, Erguzi himself starts giving off a much more imposing aura as he gears up to fight again. The pet skeleton glows brightly as he hits level 4 alongside his master, gaining a solid bump across all his base stats. The guy stays locked in, knowing the top priority right now is dispatching that elite monster still charging his way. He raises his staff with style and recites the summoning chant to bring his second bone soldier to life, affectionately dubbed Sanguzi. With a magical flash, a fresh skeleton sporting a blue bandana materializes, ready to back up his master just like his older brother. The necromancer points his hand at the giant brute, barking the attack command for his new skeleton duo to charge the target full force. The newcomer Sanguzi wastes no time, making his debut with a swift leap to drop a surprise strike on nearby targets. Wu Ju doesn't just sit on the sidelines either, bringing his staff down hard on the skull of a zombie trying to sneak up from the side. The young necromancer maneuvers across the battlefield with great agility, landing clean hits on the mobs with help from his minions. The trio works in complete harmony during the scrap, clearing out the weaker mobs and paving a direct path to the main challenge. With the rest of the pack taken care of, the guy finally stands face to face with the towering brute left on the field. He wears a confident grin, holding another magic potion bottle to guarantee he won't gas out during the finale. The young man tilts his head with a determined expression, locking his focus entirely on the formidable elite zombie waiting ahead. The giant monster hoists a massive bone club and stomps aggressively toward Wu Ju and his personal little skeleton crew. The guy points the tip of his staff forward, letting the big guy know he is the last one left standing out here. The brute fires back with a deafening roar of pure rage, eyes glowing red and eager to crush the opponent into dust. Refusing to be intimidated by the beast's size, Wu Ju raises his glowing dark magic hand to kick off the toughest showdown of his day. Wasting zero time, Wu Ju fires his bone attack aimed straight at the giant monster's face to try and crack open its guard. However, the system prompts that the hit only provoked the elite corpse, showing that the creature's physical defense is ridiculously high. The thick-skinned monster lets out an annoyed roar and shakes its head, showing the strike barely scratched its hide. Completely enraged, the giant zombie charges with heavy destructive steps, ready to squash the cheeky necromancer like a bug. Wu Ju keeps his composure amid the chaos, channeling magic through his staff once more to set up a cleaner, more lethal strike. He fires the magical projectile dead center into the creature's eye, but the blast only tilts the monster's head slightly from the shockwave. The guy is shocked to see that even 2 clean hits from his magic failed to break through that stubborn monster's defenses. With no room to back off, he takes a deep breath and decides to risk it all on a desperate push to bring the giant down fast. The elite zombie raises its heavy bone club and unleashes a crushing swing toward the MC, who scrambles to defend himself. The blow comes down with terrifying force, cracking the ground beneath and threatening to flatten the guy, who has little room to dodge. Wu Ju realizes in a panic that the incoming swing is way too fast and that he simply won't have the time to dodge out of the way. That is when his loyal skeleton buddy jumps into the path of the blow, taking the brunt of the impact with his bony frame and saving his master's life. The guy flashes a relieved smile, praising his summon's bravery for tanking that massive hit at the most critical second of the scrap. Capitalizing on the opening created by the distraction, Wu Ju leaps toward the target to land what should be the game-deciding blow. He channels all his leftover magic into his palm to cast a much more powerful and destructive version of his bone spear. The boosted spell hits the brute square in the head with a heavy thud, driving deep into the elite monster's rotten skull. The giant mob stumbles back from the force of the strike, but its wide backswing connects squarely with the guy's summons as well. Poor Sanguzi gets sent flying from the giant's brutal hit, tumbling across the dirt, unable to hold his structure together after the strike. With a sharp snap, Wu Ju's second skeleton completely shatters upon crashing into the rocky terrain. The system logs Sanguzi's destruction and shows the guy's mana is wiped clean, while he himself gets launched back with heavy force. Wu Ju hits the dirt bruised and out of breath, while the elite monster stays on its feet, slowly closing in to deliver the final hit on its prey. In a quick, desperate move, the guy pops the potions he had tucked away to patch up his condition once and for all. He chugs the blue and red mix on the double as his health and mana gauges begin filling back up right before his eyes. But before he can fully recover, the giant zombie grabs the guy by the collar with raw strength that makes the young man yell out in pain. Lifted into the air by his neck, Wu Ju coughs up blood from the tight grip, yet refuses to throw in the towel even in this tight spot. Wearing a wild, defiant grin, he stares down the monster up close and starts channeling death energy directly into the tip of his staff. The guy jams the bone staff straight into the elite giant's open maw and unleashes his most destructive spell right from the inside. A violent magical explosion rips through the inside of the monster's head, sending dark smoke and rotten debris scattering across the entire valley. The zombie's massive frame finally goes limp and crashes heavily to the dirt, kicking up a huge dust cloud upon impact. Wu Ju collapses onto the ground as well, completely spent and spitting blood, but miraculously alive after surviving that life-or-death brawl. The system prompt confirms that he took down the mighty elite carrion corpse, banking 30 fat experience points for his efforts. Worried about his master, little Erguzi comes clattering over, checking to see if the guy is still in one piece. The skeleton helps Wu Ju sit up in the dirt as the young man tries to catch his breath after nearly getting flattened by the elite giant. The necromancer pushes the dead monster's heavy arm off himself, relieved to finally be free from that suffocating weight. He silently thanks his lucky stars for downing that health potion beforehand, knowing that without that quick recovery, he would have been flat as a pancake. The guy looks at his loyal, bony helper with appreciation, getting ready to celebrate that hard-fought win with his squadmate. The two share an enthusiastic high five, stoked to have made it through and cleared the biggest threat in this secret zone. But the best part is yet to come, and Wu Ju flashes a greedy smile as he looks over the fallen elite monster's body. He holds his gloved hand over the giant frame and triggers his extraction talent, eager to see what juicy stats he can siphon from it. The system confirms a flawless extraction, awarding constitution points, defense boosts, and even a rare elite template fragment. Right on cue, the distant groans of the remaining regular undead echo out, reminding the guy that his cleanup job isn't quite done yet. Wu Ju and Erguzi trade a knowing look, well aware of what needs to be done with the leftover mobs in the area. The necromancer decides to make the most of the remaining time to clear the entire map and squeeze every bit of value out of this trial realm. His loyal minion charges in, smacking his bone club across the heads of the slow leftover zombies, putting in work with serious enthusiasm. Wu Ju puts on his own show from the back line, firing accurate spell snipes to provide cover and speed up the mob cleanup. He weaves between enemies, launching energy bursts to wrap up the last standard zombies still trying to stay on their feet. Within 10 minutes, the cleanup is wrapped up, but the guy grumbles upon seeing that the drop rates on standard mobs are painfully low. Luckily, the elite zombie dropped 2 large glowing loot orbs on the dirt, and Wu Ju heads over, hyped to see what he scored. He walks calmly toward the massive fallen body, locking his eyes on those 2 bright spheres that represent his big jackpot. The necromancer reaches out his right hand with curiosity to pop open the first drop and reveal the kind of treasure this giant was holding. From the first orb, the guy pulls a pouch packed with 300 bronze coins, along with another blue vial holding a handy mana potion. Now, he reaches out eagerly to grab the second drop left behind by the elite mob, hoping for something even more impressive. The system reveals that the prize is a heavy metal warrior armor set, boasting great defense stats and built-in resistance to carrion poison. However, he is bummed to find out the armor is warrior exclusive, meaning a squishy young necromancer like him can never equip it. But a light bulb goes off in his head as he glances to the side, wondering if his pet skeleton could take on that class instead. The guy drops to one knee in front of Erguzi and starts fitting the heavy metal armor onto the little skeleton to check the fit. Erguzi's whole look transforms with the shiny new gear, radiating an imposing aura fit for a legit frontline tank. Wu Ju bursts out laughing with joy, thrilled that his loot didn't go to waste, and that his minion is now rocking serious protection. With an ambitious, focused look, the necromancer decides the time has come to round up the final rewards left after that intense brawl. Exploring the area, he uncovers a fresh water spring, a tree loaded with edible fruit, and a locked wooden treasure chest. Floating prompts explain that the resources can satisfy hunger and restore stamina, while the chest holds special goodies inside. Wu Ju opens the wooden chest and lets out a cheer upon finding an all-class skill book perfect for appraising targets. He learns the new identification skill on the spot, celebrating the massive intel advantage he will now carry into future fights. The guy reaches out with his gloved hand toward the fruit tree and picks a ripe fruit to snack on after running on empty for so long. Sitting comfortably near the spring, he takes a bite of the tasty fruit and sighs in relief, glad to finally catch a break in this world. The young man smirks at the thought of having an endless well of magic water and a pile of mob bodies ready to be farmed for stats. He snaps his fingers with excitement, deciding this is the perfect time to extract every single point he can from that massive pile of defeated mobs. Wu Ju spends a good chunk of time extracting stats and chugging buckets of water to reset his mana, even though drinking that much water is rough. The guy reflects that an average adventurer wouldn't stand a chance against that horde, but his extraction talent let him forge a seriously beefy minion. Looking over the updated stat sheet of his level 4 skeleton, he gets hyped imagining building an unstoppable undead army down the road. Wuju examines the glowing elite template fragment with curiosity, daydreaming about the possibilities that rare item brings to the table. 3 whole days pass in that desolate realm as the young man keeps up his focused training to push his power even higher. Lounging on a wooden platform, he reflects on how he cleared several zombie nests and leveled up his overall skill mastery. Right then, a system notification pops up, offering the guy the option to settle his survival evaluation and exit the realm. Wearing a confident grin, the necromancer hits confirm to trigger the final reward payout for his survival trial. The system calculates his performance across multiple survival and combat metrics, steadily bumping his final grade all the way to a rank B. A bright blue light begins wrapping around the young man as the interface confirms his well-deserved high-tier rewards will drop shortly. The scene cuts over to the Professional Alliance headquarters in Quancheng, where 3 days of pure tension have unfolded since the kid entered the portal. The veteran Zhou Huaming sits deep in thought in his office, tapping his fingers on the desk, worried sick that the boy might not make it out in one piece. Suddenly, his office door gets kicked wide open with a loud bang, cutting the warrior's tense thoughts short. A sharp-dressed, imposing red-haired woman steps inside, revealing herself as a high-ranking silver medalist guardian within the alliance. She strides in with pure authority, stating she is here to demand answers regarding his massive breach of duty involving a forbidden class tome. The red-haired inspector takes a seat right across from the warrior, keeping up a cold, intimidating posture in the room. She tosses a heavy pair of iron handcuffs onto the wooden desk, telling veteran Zhou Huaming to cuff himself up to be taken in. The man scrambles to defend his play, explaining he used the forbidden tome to produce a dark caster and draw out the rogue cult. The redhead lets out an annoyed sigh, mentioning she already read that ridiculous pitch and found the idea of using the kid completely reckless. She glares at her colleague, bluntly stating that using a rookie as cult bait is the dumbest tactic she has ever heard of. The woman slams her hand hard against the wooden desk, making the metal cuffs rattle from the impact of her sudden anger. She demands to know where young Wuju is, pointing out that the plan called for him to exit the survival portal alive on this exact day. Zhou Huaming closes his eyes, trying to keep his cool through the lecture, calmly replying that the exact extraction window hasn't arrived just yet. The redhead leans back in her chair, ready to wait it out and see if that clueless bait could actually survive a level 5 portal. 10 whole minutes tick by in complete silence until the monitoring device in the warrior's hands begins glowing brightly in the office. The guardian catches his nervous look and teases if he is too scared to see the result, offering to reveal the kid's fate for him. Zhou Huaming brushes off the offer and pulls the glowing gadget away, ready to check the outcome with his own eyes. He triggers the holographic projection on the wall, which displays a notification that the challenger just wrapped up the portal survival trial. Relieved to see the young man pulled off the clear, the veteran begins explaining the situation to his colleague with much more ease. The redhead flashes a playful, sarcastic grin, congratulating her peer on avoiding jail time for military negligence for the time being. But her expression shifts when the final evaluation hologram starts rendering on the glowing display right before their eyes. The guardian is left completely speechless, eyes wide in total disbelief at the giant rank B stamped across the magical projection. She realizes with shock that an ordinary kid pulled a rank B out of a level 5 secret zone, meaning Zhou Huaming stumbled upon an absolute gem. Zhou Huaming takes a firm stand before the inspector, declaring he will take full responsibility for whatever his new recruit does. But the woman fires back, demanding the boy be handed straight over to the tribunal, making the warrior determined to shield him no matter what. Their heated argument gets cut short by a sudden surge of magical energy, manifesting right in the center of the office. With a blinding flash, Wuju appears hovering in midair during his official recall, touching down right in front of his armored mentor. He steps firmly onto the conference room floor, brushing dust off his tattered clothes, still trying to grasp what is going on. The guy warmly thanks Uncle Joe for saving his neck, but quickly catches the intimidating vibe from that mysterious woman in the suit. Inspector Lee eyes the kid up and down with skepticism, wondering how a basic necromancer apprentice pulled off such a ridiculous feat. She seriously questions how someone with such a weak base class managed to walk away with a high score from a level 5 portal. 10 minutes later, Wu Ju tries to explain his side of the story, claiming he simply got lucky with an early staff drop during the trial. He shares how he took down dozens of zombies using basic summoning and spellcraft, leaving the woman pretty doubtful of his tale. The Silver Guardian smirks sarcastically, rattling off all the convenient potions and drops the young man claimed to have found along the way. She calls out how absurd it is for a total rookie to juggle spellcasting while commanding a high-level skeleton independently in battle. The inspector points out that even prodigy mages take years to master that level of multitasking, laughing off the kid's attempt to spin a story. Wu Ju feels noticeably awkward under her skepticism and decides to put on a live demonstration of his skills right there in the office. He gives a quick nod to his trusty skeleton Erguzi, who immediately tosses a red fruit into the air to start the test. The guy channels his mana in the blink of an eye, firing an accurate spell straight at the fruit suspended in the air before the proctors. The projectile pierces clean through the target and shatters it mid-air, demonstrating the precision and speed of his mana control. Without missing a beat, he holds his arm out again to show he can maintain focus and chain multiple spells with zero strain. Another shot strikes the mark with pinpoint accuracy, confirming that his aim and cast speed are genuinely on another level. Zhou Huaming watches the display with his jaw on the floor, totally stunned by the ordinary young necromancer's absurd talent. Wu Ju pulls an innocent, cheeky pose, remarking that it is pretty basic stuff that anyone with 2 working hands can pull off. Inspector Lee is left visibly stunned and red-faced by the kid's nerve, swallowing her pride as an official. The veteran warrior cracks a proud grin, satisfied to see his young protege shut down the arrogant officer. The group walks down the Alliance corridors while Wu Ju keeps insisting he wasn't lying about what went down inside the portal. Uncle Joe swings open the doors to a massive training room, explaining that the area is used to evaluate elite mages at level 20. He invites the young man onto the testing grounds to run a full official assessment and push his current limits. Wu Ju readies his bone staff with style and calls up his warrior, Erguzi, to kick off the practical demonstration of their toolkit. The skeleton dashes across the simulation field, dodging obstacles with agility that is impressive for his tier. As his summon advances, the necromancer fires rapid-fire ranged spells to neutralize targets with speed and precision. Erguzi uses his metal armor and blocking fundamentals to provide cover for his master, showing their coordination is top tier. The 2 shatter training dummies one after another, running a sequence of synchronized tag-team attacks across the arena. The final wooden target gets blown apart in the center by an accurate blast, wrapping up the young necromancer's technical showcase. Wu Ju lets out a tired sigh upon noticing his mana pool is empty, bummed that he was just shy of leveling up his bone spell. An assistant hands the printed performance readout to Zhou Huaming, while Inspector Lee looks over the technical data closely. The veteran proudly points at the sheet, asking the inspector if she is satisfied with his recruit outperforming every single rookie benchmark. The redhead secretly admits that the kid's skill, proficiency, and control are monstrous, showing the traits of a genuine prodigy. Still, she points out that the Necromancer Apprentice starter class only packs 4 skills, which puts a hard cap on his growth ceiling. The inspector asks why he chose to wrap up the trial after clearing just 1 mob pack when he clearly had the stamina to farm way more. The guy scratches his head with an awkward chuckle, replying he didn't want to push his luck since walking away safe was his top priority. The red-haired woman looks unimpressed by the kid's cautious answer, writing him off as overly timid before giving the group a cold departure. Zhou Huaming watches his colleague walk away down the hall, letting out a relieved sigh for finally cooling the officer's temper. He mentions what a headache that whole mess was, turning back toward the young man with a stern expression that hides his real thoughts. The young man flashes a big, playful grin, thinking he is finally in the clear with the Alliance higher-ups. but his smile fades fast when he catches the dark, furious look that veteran Zhou Huaming is shooting his way. The veteran grabs the kid by the collar with a firm grip, warning him with a scary look that it is time to settle the score. Wu Ju panics and starts flailing around as he gets dragged by the collar straight back into the captain's private office. The guy yells for mercy while the armored brute drags him inside, without hesitation to teach the cheeky rookie a lesson. Loud, scuffling noises echo from behind the captain's closed door, mixed with the kid's desperate apologies. The door swings open, and Wu Ju gets tossed out with a warning from the veteran to never show his face again if he pulls a stunt like that. Now suited up in the official team recruit uniform, the guy flashes a winning grin, knowing the rough lesson was totally worth it in the end. It all starts with veteran Zhou tossing a stack of files right in Wu Ju's face, telling the rookie to hustle hard so he doesn't embarrass the squad. The poor guy is left in utter shock, having just joined the team only to get slapped with a high-stakes mission right out of the gate. His destination is the Nanshan Base, a massive complex built specifically to train and prep fresh combatants. Wu Ju slips into the facility library, remembering his boss mentioned a dark class advancement scroll surfaced around here. Suspecting a cult mole is lurking inside, the veteran sent the MC in as bait to flush the enemy out into the open. But he has spent a whole week dusting shelves as a librarian with zero updates, making him feel like he was left high and dry. He quickly cools off, figuring the boss must have a covert play running to avoid tipping off the bad guys early. With that comforting thought, the young man decides that since things are quiet, he might as well move on his own terms. He cracks his knuckles and pulls up his system status screen to check how his necromancy toolkit is looking. Seeing that he hasn't leveled up all week, the guy decides tonight is the perfect opportunity to finally put in work. Wu Ju is thrilled to see he finally managed to push his new meditation skill to the novice tier. On top of that, he pocketed 50 silver coins as a payout from the previous mission, and he plans to dump it all into buffing his minion. He sinks all the cash into enhancements, boosting the skeleton Erguzi by the equivalent of 110 levels in one shot. When the clock hits 5:30 in the afternoon, the young man celebrates the end of another exhausting shift. The plan now is to take a few days off, grab some food, and stock up on all the necessary supplies for his upcoming grind. With a confident smirk and a sharp look in his eyes, the guy looks fully prepared to kick off his leveling route. Walking down the street, he brags about stacking 56 silver coins in his pouch after clearing that last challenge. The MC thinks this crazy amount of cash is more than enough to go on a shopping spree and grab whatever he wants, but his mood crashes upon stepping into the shop and finding out a single mana potion runs for 1 coin, while a health potion costs 2. He almost faints seeing that basic armor runs for 10 silvers, while a skill upgrade item demands a whopping 100 coins. Wu Ju stands there looking totally stunned, unable to believe prices in this district are so crazy high and completely out of touch. He checks out a mana regeneration necklace for 10 silver coins, but passes on it, feeling the price-to-performance ratio is a total joke. In the end, he grabs only the bare essentials, a few potions and cheap blades, coming out to a painful total of 20 silver coins. The guy nearly tears up handing over the cash, knowing it would take 2 whole years of clearing sewers to save that kind of money. With no time to feel sorry for himself, he packs his gear and books it toward District 5 to level up and make up for the loss. He takes a shortcut through a dark alley, trying to recall if this path was truly the fastest route to his destination. Suddenly, Wu Ju crosses paths with a mysterious figure wrapped in a black cloak hawking shady gear right in the middle of the alleyway. The young man tenses up and starts sweating, finding it super creepy to run into a black market dealer in an abandoned spot like this. Taking a closer look, he feels an overwhelming pressure pouring off the hooded guy, whose blue eyes pierce through the dark. Spooked by the sketchy aura, the guy decides to look away and act totally clueless to walk past without catching the stranger's attention. He picks up the pace, praying he won't get stopped, as it would be a massive headache if the hooded guy tried to push a sale on him. Fortunately, the MC walks right past the shady merchant and keeps heading toward the city borders. After a long trek, he finally reaches the crest of a rocky hill where he can see the entrance to the target zone. The young man stops in front of a massive metal gate blocking the way, which leads straight into the dangerous territory of District 5. Ju pulls out his staff pass and taps it against the security scanner to get clearance into the restricted zone. The scanner beeps, and the heavy metal doors slowly slide open, unveiling the entrance to the monster-infested territory. Wearing a confident grin, he spots the sign pointing toward the famous skeleton cave and gears up for combat. The guy takes a deep breath and takes his first steps inside, knowing his real leveling journey kicks off right here. He steps into the cavern's gloom as the tunnel grows quieter and more intimidating with every step he takes. The MC scans his surroundings, knowing this hunting ground covers a solid 15-kilometer radius. He recalls that the skeleton warriors roaming the first floor of the cave usually sit between levels 2 and 5. Staff in hand, Ju casts his summoning spell and calls out Sanguzi to back him up while exploring the zone. Even though this isn't the original skeleton, the guy keeps the name anyway to pretend his loyal minion was never taken down. But looking at his lone guard, the young man feels that roaming around here with just one protector doesn't feel safe at all. To fix the issue, he burns some mana and summons the mighty Erguzi, who pops back up surrounded by a surge of blue energy. The only catch is that double summoning completely drains his pool, dropping his mana bar to 0 on the spot. Lacking the juice to keep moving, the necromancer has to lean against the floor to rest and recharge before pressing on. He takes a seat and pops his meditation skill, letting his mana slowly tick back up as energy swirls around him. Seeing his pool finally climb to 25 points, the guy gets up, figuring that is plenty to work with for now. After walking for over half an hour with his 2 summons, his mana bar tops off completely, leaving him fully prepped for a brawl. Navigating the quiet cave, Ju finds it super weird that he hasn't bumped into a single skeleton yet. Suddenly, a sharp whistling noise cuts through the air as an arrow flies at high speed straight toward our MC. The shot lands dead center on Sanguzi's skull, which thankfully is solid bone, and avoids getting taken out in one hit. Ju goes into a frenzy seeing his beloved helper get tagged out of nowhere by that mystery shot. Pissed off by the sneak attack, the young man yells into the darkness, demanding to know who took the cheap shot. A young archer steps out from the shadows apologizing, explaining he shot out of pure reflex upon spotting movement in the dark. The guy feels super awkward about almost wiping out the necromancer's minion, who is still standing there with an arrow stuck in his forehead. Ju laughs it off coolly, knowing nobody would expect to run into tamed skeletons roaming around here. The archer asks if he is new to the area, noting that the cave is usually packed with people competing for farming spots. Feeling bad for the rookie, the friendly archer offers to hand over his own farming spot and invites him to tag along. Over an hour later, they reach an isolated corridor where the guide mentions plenty of lost mobs tend to wander in. He also points out a hidden alcove in the cave wall where Ju can hole up if too many mobs swarm in at once. To be even more helpful, the Good Samaritan passes over a torch, some water, and dry rations to our MC. The archer waves goodbye, wishing him luck, while Ju waves back, thinking there really are still good people in the world. Glancing at his minion, the young man jokes that he didn't take an arrow to the head for nothing and that it is all part of the grind. The necromancer and his 2 loyal helpers set up at the mouth of the dark tunnel, waiting for targets to show up. 2 glowing white eyes light up in the pitch-black tunnel, signaling that the first enemy has finally decided to pop out. Ju pops his identification skill to pull up every bit of data on the approaching creature. A glowing blue crosshair locks onto the target, breaking down the enemy's stat sheet and combat numbers in detail. The screen reveals a level 2 pale skeleton with stats very similar to what Erguzi had before getting buffed up. With a confident smirk, the guy tells his minions to stand down since he wants to take on the mob in a one-on-one duel. He preps his offensive spell, knowing the skill is right on the verge of leveling up if he scores a few more takedowns. The magical blast hits the enemy skeleton dead on, shattering it into a shower of bone fragments. The system logs the takedown of the level 5 pale skeleton, handing over a batch of experience points to the MC. Ju pops his extraction talent on the defeated frame, successfully pulling a small fraction of strength from the mob. He spends 100 bronze coins to feed that extracted stat straight into his loyal skeleton, Erguzi. Half an hour rolls by, and his summons keep steamrolling every single mob that walks into their path without breaking a sweat. The guy celebrates the incredible farming efficiency, giving credit to his buddy Shu Yuan Cheng for not hyping the spot up for nothing. A glowing prompt pops up showing his main skill finally reached level 2, ramping up its damage output. He keeps collecting fragments, aiming to pump even more power into his primary helper to make him unstoppable. But a red warning screen pops up stating the minion has hit the stats ceiling allowed for his current level. The young man lets out a frustrated sigh, realizing the system hit him with a progression wall way sooner than he anticipated. He knows Erguzi is solid for a standard summon, but still sits way below the level of an elite boss mob in this zone. To keep pushing the stats, he will need rare elite fragments or a direct level up for his own extraction talent. Since that is off the table right now, he decides to focus on buffing the other skeleton, though he knows it is going to cost a pretty penny. Wu Ju remembers he held off on the upgrade earlier because dropping 11 silver coins felt way too steep. With no other viable plays, he commits the cash, knowing taking on elite mobs with his current setup would be pure recklessness. The system deducts the silver coins and unlocks the upgrade, upgrading Sanguzi into a third-generation skeleton. With his wallet feeling lighter, the guy dramatically jokes that his wallet is crying after dropping that small fortune in one go. He pats the skeleton's skull, promising that from here on out, he will keep him safe and won't use him as a free meat shield. Suddenly, the MC's eyes go wide as he feels a sudden surge of danger dropping from somewhere right above his head. A glowing arrow packed with magical energy drops from above at ridiculous speed, zeroing in straight on the necromancer. Wu Ju goes into full panic, spotting the lethal shot rocketing toward him with zero time to dodge out of the way. Moving on pure reflex, the newly upgraded Sanguzi leaps in front of his master, taking the brunt of the arrow strike. The shot drives deep into the skeleton's chest, spreading dark energy all across the minion's bony frame. Sweating buckets from the close call, the guy realizes he would have been taken out instantly if his summon hadn't reacted on the fly. Fuming with rage, the MC barks at Erguzi to charge in and slice the mystery shooter into tiny pieces. Looking ahead, they spot a formidable elite skeleton archer wielding a magical bow atop a high rocky platform. Wu Ju pops his identification and is shocked to see it is a level 5 elite mob packing terrifying numbers. The monster begins winding up its next magical shot, and the guy recognizes the dangerous ice arrow skill loading up. Panicking at the sight of the magic arrow, Wu Ju orders Erguzi to pull back and decides to push full throttle alongside Sanguzi. He frantically shouts for everyone to sprint as fast as possible to close the gap before the enemy's next shot goes off. Seeing the elite archer charge another deadly shot, the young man knows he cannot let that blast connect with his summons. The glowing, energy-charged arrow is loosed from above, tracing a devastating path straight toward the squad. The guy enters total panic, fearing that massive strike is about to pull off a double kill on his minions. Refusing to take the loss, the MC acts swiftly and manages to position Sanguzi to intercept the attack at the final second. The bone minion tanks the brunt of the magic explosion, shielding his master from taking any splash damage. Taking advantage of the window while the mob reaches for another arrow, the young man charges headlong at the elite archer. Completely furious thinking about the 11 silver coins burned on gear and upgrades, he demands his money back. Wu Ju channels his anger and lands a solid spell square in the middle of the opponent's torso, knocking it back with the impact. The monster completely loses its footing as the bones in its legs take heavy damage from the guy's surprise hit. The young man mocks the situation, joking that the enemy used to be an adventurer until it took an arrow to the knee, and orders Erguzi in to wrap things up. He tells his main summon to take the next incoming shot head-on, knowing it is just a standard arrow with zero magic backing it. The basic projectile plinks against Erguzi's armor and snaps harmlessly, failing to leave so much as a scratch on the plated skeleton. The guy remarks with satisfaction that as long as the head stays on, his warrior can easily soak up standard physical attacks. Erguzi steps in with a heavy strike, and the MC declares that the time has finally come to flip the script in their favor. He points out that an archer that loses mobility and gets its ranged weapon shut down up close becomes ridiculously easy prey. With a clean slash, the skeleton warrior snaps the enemy's bow, shutting down any chance of a counter from the elite mob. The summon follows up with another hard rush against the weakened target, which can no longer put up a defense. Wu Ju celebrates the wrap-up, knowing that with the enemy completely cornered, victory is the only possible outcome. The system window pops up, confirming that the elite skeleton archer has been officially taken down by our young necromancer. The young man cheers upon seeing he hit level 4 and that his trusty minion, Guzi, leveled up as well, gaining extra stats. Wrapped in a glowing blue aura, Wu Ju's skeleton celebrates his own power-up after the tough showdown. The guy rubs his hands together, eager to see what valuable loot he can extract from this mighty elite mob. The system confirms he successfully extracted agility and attack power, along with a prized elite template fragment from the defeated archer. He gets hyped upon realizing he only needs one more fragment to craft a complete permanent elite template. Wu Ju flashes a winning grin, concluding that upgrading his warrior's template to the elite tier won't be that hard after all. He scoops up the glowing loot drop on the ground and gets ready to check what came out of that mysterious orb of light. To his surprise, he pulls a fragile skeleton archer template along with 2 more silver coins to help make up for his expenses. The guy recalls that the books in the base library actually noted elite mobs had a shot at dropping these exact templates. He remembers Uncle Joe always wanted an extraordinary template, but knows with his extraction talent he will cook up something even better. While others have to farm thousands of bosses, he just needs to take down 3 elites to craft whatever he needs. Reading through the new template's requirements, he realizes anyone else would hit a wall, but in his hands, he can shape his minions however he wants. Even though his main focus is building a frontline tank for protection, he admits having a ranged archer on deck will be awesome. The young necromancer casts his spell and summons another standard skeleton to serve as the base for his next upgrade project. Next, he drops 800 bronze coins to bump Sanguzi's agility, checking off the requirements demanded by the template. With everything locked in, he applies the consumable item directly onto his summon, who begins glowing brightly with the energy of the upgrade. The guy celebrates the success of the process upon seeing his minion officially reclassed into a legit skeleton archer. He looks over the summon's refreshed stat sheet, which now features a bone bow and ranged abilities all ready to be road-tested. The MC notes that the archer class funnels its stats almost entirely into the character's agility pool. Even without fully grasping all the numbers, he decides he will keep focusing on boosting the minion's attack speed. The plan now is to power level Sanguzi fast so he can unlock the full potential hiding in that build. With his squad powered up, he presses down the tunnel, dead set on hunting another elite to add more fragments to his stash. Suddenly, a pack of mobs jumps out from the cave shadows and kicks off a wild skirmish against our MC's squad. Sanguzi makes a grand entrance by firing a clean shot that takes out the head of the mob leading the charge. Meanwhile, Guzi uses his sword to deflect incoming melee attacks, keeping the front line completely locked down. Wu Ju's warrior counters hard, slicing through the weaker mobs without giving them a single window to react. The young man hoists his staff, noting that directing a skeleton archer requires way more tactical focus than running regular melee units. Tracking Sanguzi's crazy attack speed, the necromancer realizes his squad's combined firepower is reaching insane heights. With a knowing smirk, he concludes they finally pack enough punch to do some real damage in this cave. Out of nowhere, a massive wave of purple energy erupts right in front of Wu Ju, wiping out the mobs in the blink of an eye. The guy nearly jumps out of his boots from the sudden boom, scrambling to see where that loud, devastating blast came from. Playing it safe, he ducks behind a boulder to scope out the situation without putting himself in the line of fire. Wu Ju is completely baffled as he peeks through the rock gap, unable to make sense of what is going on up ahead. A dramatic close-up reveals the fierce, locked-in gaze of someone about to run a complete clinic on the undead. A massive horde of dozens of enemy skeletons is getting utterly crushed at high speed right down the middle of the hallway. The young man mutters in shock that anyone with a weak heart would probably faint right on the spot watching this scene unfold. Non-stop purple blasts keep tearing through the cave as the mob army gets ground down to pure bone dust. The MC finally spots a red-haired girl swinging a massive warhammer, leaping right into the thick of the action. His jaw drops, seeing this mystery warrior taking on and wiping the floor with the entire skeleton horde all by herself. Wuju wonders in disbelief who this ridiculously strong girl could be, clearing out the cave with that much ease and flair. He tries using his identification skill, and after failing 3 times in a row, he finally manages to pull up her profile. The system reveals her name is Zhong Shengnan, and that she rocks an extraordinary tier class with strength scaling well above 10. The redhead catches the guy peeking and thinks to herself that people really need to learn some manners when casting inspection spells. Wu Ju trembles with awe upon confirming she is an elite combatant, packing monstrous stats that blow any regular fighter out of the water. Looking to get on her good side, he starts cheering and calling the girl boss, which leaves the young warrior pretty surprised and intrigued. Zhong Shengnan cracks a little smirk, realizing this nosy kid might not be as annoying as she initially thought. The guy drifts off into a daydream, thinking about how cool it would be to have enough strength in the future to swing a giant hammer with that kind of style. He quietly hypes himself up over being lucky enough to run into this powerhouse, who is basically clearing the whole floor for him for free. But his chill moment gets interrupted when he spots a pack of 3 mobs trying to flank the redhead from behind. The mobs make a stealthy push while the warrior is busy dealing with the targets right in her direct field of vision. Moving fast, Wu Ju points at the flankers and orders his archer Sanguzi to drop the 3 threats closing in from behind. Just as the girl lands another crushing hammer strike, Wu Ju's minion sends an accurate arrow flying straight toward the flankers. The bow shot shuts down the sneaky threat the exact second the warrior flattens the last enemy in front of her. The guy and his skeletons start cheering loud and clear, shouting that the boss is crazy cool and easily the most awesome person around. In the heat of the moment, he catches sight of an enemy skeleton archer drawing a bead on the girl from a high rocky perch. Wu Ju recites the incantation and fires his bone spell at the sniper before it can loose a shot at the redhead. The spell scores a direct hit, and Zhong Shengnan notices the guy's quick assist as she wraps up the main fight in the cave. The MC lets out a relieved sigh for reacting fast enough to keep his new idol from taking any scratches. He keeps laying on the over-the-top hype with every move she makes, leaving the girl feeling a little flustered by the whole show. The silhouette of the mighty warrior stands tall atop the mountain of shattered bones left behind from that cave mob army. Stamping her foot down, she crushes the last intact skull, showing off her overwhelming strength and commanding presence. Zhong Shengnan strikes a majestic pose with her giant warhammer as the dust from the brawl slowly settles. The young man is in utter shock, seeing that this powerhouse wiped out dozens of mobs in a matter of minutes. The floor is covered in glowing loot orbs dropped by the monsters, yet the warrior stays planted in her pose. She nervously thinks to herself that bending over to pick up loose change right now would completely ruin her legendary warrior aura. Keeping up the cool facade, she casually rests the heavy hammer on her shoulders and decides to ignore the drops on the ground. With smooth steps, she walks over to a wooden treasure chest tucked away right behind a pile of rocks. Wu Ju watches her kick the chest lid open with force, not even bothering to use her hands for something so simple. She pulls out a level 5 mage ring and celebrates, mentioning she can fetch a nice bag of coins by selling it later. Glancing to the side, the redhead notices the kid still staring with puppy dog eyes that make her feel super self-conscious. Playing it indifferent, she says the item is useless to her and tosses the valuable ring to the boy, claiming their meeting was meant to be. The warrior turns and begins walking away, stating with a shrug that an expert like her has no need for pocket change. She walks off proud of having maintained her cool, untouchable aura in front of her newest dedicated fan in the cave. A dramatic close-up on her face shows she is trying her absolute hardest not to look back and ruin her picture-perfect exit. But her cool facade instantly crumbles when she spots the kid happily scooping up every single glowing drop she left behind. Zhong Shengnan fumes inside. Realizing the young man is vacuuming the floor and banking the entire pile of loot, she skipped out of pure pride. She ducks behind a rock to spy on the guy, trying to keep her cool so she doesn't go back and knock some sense into the cheeky kid. The redhead glares at the young man, thinking that if he dares call her an idiot behind her back, she will reclaim every single coin and beat him black and blue. Oblivious to the danger, Wu-Ju celebrates with his summons, assuming the rich elite boss left the coins behind simply because her inventory was full. Wu-Ju is riding high, feeling like the luckiest guy alive for crossing paths with such a strong and generous warrior. Meanwhile, Zhong Shengnan secretly loves every second of it from behind the rocks, soaking up the hype and hoping he keeps boosting her ego. 15 minutes later, the young man wraps up collecting 37 loot orbs, figuring that even with low drop rates, free loot is free loot. He sees his funds jump to 80 silver coins with the potions he gathered, though he knows that is just the tip of the iceberg for his haul. The real jackpot drops when Wu-Ju secures a rustic mana ring, glowing so brightly it reflects in his eyes as the ultimate prize. He recognizes the piece as the exact boost he needed for his progression, even if the gear requirements ask for a bit more stats. The only issue is that he is still sitting at level 4 while the ring demands level 5, but the insane profit with 0 potion burn makes the wait totally worth it. Wu-Ju feels bummed he couldn't siphon stats off the mobs the redhead took down, but gets hyped again upon spotting a treasure chest sitting wide open down the path. He heads over to the large wooden chest with high energy, celebrating his lucky run and the pile of profits he is about to secure right here. But the fun is cut short when a system prompt pops up out of nowhere, announcing that he triggered the conditions for a special trial realm. A massive sphere of brilliant light suddenly erupts beneath their feet, swallowing the necromancer and his loyal skeletons before they can even react. The blinding glow blasts through the dark cavern rift, creating a massive wave of magical pressure that shakes the entire area. The energy builds up until it tears open a glowing, cross-shaped dimensional portal, ripping through the fabric of space right in front of them. Zhong Shengnan watches the whole thing from afar in absolute horror, unable to comprehend what kind of crazy anomaly is unfolding before her eyes. The guy and his 2 undead squadmates get hurled through the air into the unknown, screaming their heads off inside the vortex. They end up trapped inside an energy bubble as they plunge into a dark abyss where shadowy silhouettes seem to watch their fall. A mysterious hooded man catches the realm's activation and decides to check his crystal ball to see which bold rookie pulled it off. His glowing eyes go wide as he checks the reflection in the sphere, surprised to find the young intruder isn't listed on any of his official rosters. The hooded man recalls that opening that portal required being a low-level dark caster and clearing a massive horde in record time. Wearing a dark grin, he figures the kid is a prime prospect for his organization and decides to test what the guy is really made of. But the villain's hype turns into dead silence upon watching the playback of the kid just cheering happily while others did all the heavy lifting. Seething with rage, the man crushes a magic crystal, furious that the secret trial he prepped with so much care got hijacked by such a freeloader. He grits his teeth in pure frustration over having his master plan completely ruined by a tag-along who didn't even put in the work to get in. Meanwhile, Wu-Ju lands flat on his back on the hard ground of the new zone, shaking all over as he tries to process the mess he just dropped into. A fresh system prompt pops up before him, confirming his new temporary home is the dangerous land of the undead. The zone briefing warns that this place is a total nightmare for the living, and that his main quest right now is simply to survive for 10 days. Spooked by the hostile vibe, the necromancer scrambles to his feet and orders Guzi and Sanguzi to stay on high alert for any incoming threats. Suddenly, heavy footsteps start echoing across the rocky ground, right near where the MC's squad just landed, signaling unwanted company. Wu-Ju turns around in pure panic upon realizing they are far from alone in this forgotten wasteland. Looking down, he comes face to face with a massive army of skeletons geared to the teeth, ready to cut down any intruder in sight. Standing tall in the middle of that scary mob, a powerful skeleton mage with blue flames dancing in its eyes leads the undead pack. The monster drops a magic barrier toward the trio of intruders, shutting down any easy exit for the young necromancer. The creature lets out a silent roar, channeling dark magic to direct its army into an all-out rush against the trespassers. Wu-Ju panics and yells at the top of his lungs for his two minions to rush the mage before things get totally out of hand. Erguzi charges boldly toward the enemy commander while arrows from Sanguzi fly through the air to provide cover for his teammate. One of the clean shots lands dead center in the skeleton, Mage's eye socket, interrupting its spell cast halfway through. The boss collapses into a pile of useless bones, and the system logs the elite kill, rewarding a fat chunk of experience points. With that lightning-fast win, Wu-Ju finally hits level 5 and celebrates upon seeing he unlocked new stats and necromancer skills. But the celebration is cut short the second he looks forward and realizes the real trouble is just getting started. Looming on the horizon, an endless wave of angry mobs rolls in like a dust storm, marching aggressively straight toward the trio. From high up on the massive structure, Wu-Ju watches in horror at the insane volume of angry skeletons swarming up the steps. He lets out a frustrated shout, realizing the spot is desperate and that he will have to bring his absolute A-game to make it through alive. The young man starts thinking the system has a personal grudge against him, constantly dropping him into the worst spots imaginable to take him out. The mob keeps climbing the massive pyramid with terrifying screeches, while the trio scrambles to put together a defensive stand at the summit. Wu-Ju reads the battlefield alongside his undead minions, hunting for any tactical edge in the middle of all the chaos. He tells his two skeletons to lock down the staircase choke point to prevent the mob from rushing up all at once. Opening the two leftover loot orbs, he pulls 5 silver coins and a fragile skeleton mage apprentice template. Wasting 0 time, the guy pops his extraction talent on the defeated mage's body to fish for anything useful for the scrap. The system logs a successful extraction, granting bonus spirit stats, mana pools, and a valuable elite template fragment. Wu-Ju stares intently at the fragment icon, knowing this piece could be the key to turning the tables in his favor. He pulls up his system screen with a serious look, gearing up to run a fusion that could completely rewrite the outcome of this fight. The necromancer hits the option to combine his saved elite template fragments to forge something way more powerful. The fusion progress bar starts loading across the floating interface as he waits on pins and needles for the outcome. The guy watches the interface refresh with brand new data the second the process wraps up successfully. He breaks into a smile upon seeing he unlocked the Bone Shield skill, which will definitely provide some much-needed defense. But he snaps back to reality, remembering that if they cannot hold off the next big wave, all this effort goes right out the window. Another prompt flashes on screen confirming the fusion is complete, producing a shiny, brand new elite template for the young man. The item breakdown explains that it breaks the stat caps on a standard summon, letting it evolve straight into the elite tier. Pulling the glowing item from his stash, the guy runs into the big question of which minion should get the upgrade. He knows that if he buffs himself right now, his minions Erguzi and Sanguzi will stay squishy and get wiped out by the pack. Wu-Ju sizes up Erguzi, his frontline tank who has been the team's main shield ever since the Carrion Plains. He notes that Sanguzi puts out solid damage, but is way too fragile to hold down a narrow staircase against an entire monster army. Looking at the defensive layout, the young necromancer makes the final call to ensure everyone makes it out alive. With full conviction, he points the glowing item toward the chosen minion to kick off the special elite transformation. He launches the glowing template forward, sending the magical energy rocketing straight into his loyal bone partner. The guy calls out Erguzi's name as the stream of blue light wraps the skeleton warrior in a cocoon of raw spiritual power. But the catch hits when the system demands a steep fee of 50 silver coins to complete the minion's evolution process. He almost sheds a tear over his wallet from having to burn the cash he worked so hard to save, but confirms the charge out of pure necessity anyway. The system pulls up a branch of evolution paths, and the young man gets intrigued upon spotting a secret option tailored to special environments. He looks back at the bone throne behind him and figures anyone with half a brain would pick the Bone Lord route without a second thought. With a confident tap, the guy locks in the Bone Lord choice, officially triggering the transformation of his very first minion. Erguzi begins glowing intensely right in the middle of the staircase, while enemy forces keep charging up without mercy. The skeleton warrior's eye sockets ignite with wild blue flames, showing that his power is jumping to a completely different tier. The imposing transformation makes the nearest enemies pull back in fear upon feeling the commanding aura of the former basic skeleton. However, instead of jumping into the fight, Erguzi casually turns his back on the brawl and starts walking up the stairs toward the Bone Throne. The minion strolls slowly up to the towering bone throne at the pyramid's summit under the puzzled eyes of his teammates. He takes a comfortable seat on the throne, and the system prompts that the full evolution will take a long 10 minutes to finish. Wuju nearly loses his mind seeing the timer, realizing that holding out for 10 minutes in this madhouse is basically mission impossible. But like the stubborn MC he is, he flashes a defiant grin and decides he is going to find a way to hold the line no matter what. He reaches into his item pouch quickly, looking for any resources that might help him weather this nasty storm of enemies. The guy quickly equips his rustic mana ring, knowing full well that every wasted second here could cost him his life. He uses his teeth to pop the corks off his precious mana potions, prepping to recharge his reserves in the middle of absolute chaos. Wuju downs the potions in one go, feeling the flow of mana rush back into his system and top off his new accessory. Focusing his newly restored magic pool, he brings up a massive, intimidating bone shield to serve as a roadblock. With staff in hand and shield raised, the necromancer takes a commanding and fearless battle stance at the top of the stone pyramid. He notices Sanguzi is completely out of arrows, making his skeleton archer basically useless in the clash about to go down. The guy realizes that leaving the minion out there with no ammo would just mean watching him get ripped apart by the angry mob. Even knowing the summon is just a mindless construct, Wuju feels a pang of attachment and chooses to dismiss the summon to save his buddy. The skeleton archer fades smoothly into glowing particles of light as the guy quietly says goodbye, hoping to summon him back later. Wuju takes a deep breath and locks all his focus on the sea of threats, rushing up the pyramid steps straight toward him. Just then, the first wave of enemy skeletons finally reaches the pyramid's peak with blades drawn, as Wuju lets out one last breath.